All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to see you all. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm Audrey Lussgarden. I'm a global immigration attorney based in Michigan in the US, and I'm one of the co-founders of Paradigm in charge of our Grow area. We're really happy to have you here with us today to discuss why and how to grow a truly sustainable business that gives back to society by elevating the human potential of its people. As some of you know, the founding of Paradigm was inspired by Doughnut Economics, which is a movement that aims to look at economics differently, going beyond just money. And one of the central tenets of the Grow area that I lead within Paradigm is that we should look for new ways to grow, going beyond a traditional definition of growth as merely the acquisition of experience, of wealth, of status. So today we want to talk about how we can grow at work by developing truly sustainable businesses that strive to elevate the human potential of their people. And perhaps along the way, also end up elevating the more traditional measures of success of the business. Sustainability can be both good for people and good for the bottom line. We have some really great speakers who are going to talk more about this, from the big picture question of why you should elevate human potential to a framework for how you can elevate human potential, and closing with stories of people who have elevated human potential in some way. I will turn it over to Renee Stegman, who's a director at Relocation Africa based in Cape Town, South Africa, to introduce our speakers. But we also very much want this conversation to be a conversation. So if you have questions, thoughts, ideas, please feel free to type them in the chat box as we go along. I'll try to keep an eye on that and interject, reading those out where they fit. And we're also going to reserve a few minutes at the end for questions and answers and just a discussion. So don't be shy. Please feel free to speak up. We very much view this event as the beginning of a conversation rather than a standalone event. So we will be continuing this topic and this theme going forward. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Renee.
Thank you so much. And it's so lovely to be here and moderate this session with you, Audrey. As Audrey said, Renee Stegman, I'm in South Africa. I run Relocation Africa. And I am passionate about sustainable development. And so, although I'm not speaking much on it today, I'm moderating the session with Audrey, and I'm just excited to be able to share some of our esteemed panel, some of their backgrounds. So I'm going to start with Niels de Faria, who's the founder of Positive, based in Portugal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Renee. So I'm Niels, the founder of Positive, which is a community of businesses that understand that we need to go beyond sustainability, and we actually need to raise the bar, which means restoring and regenerating ecosystem and fostering social justice. And my background is basically at the intersection of youth empowerment, sustainability, and entrepreneurship. I've got the chance to work with a couple of organizations at different levels, from the UN, the EU Commission, to grassroots initiatives and social businesses. And that's a true pleasure to be here with you all today. And hopefully we can co-create the future we need together in this conversation, and kind of kick off the discussion and then follow each other's work and support each other on the journey.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks so much, Niels. So over to Ben Sukia, based in the UK.
Hi, everyone. Good to see so many of you who I know and a few people who I don't know. My name is Ben. I'm the director of my own consultancy, which is called Navigate GM. I've been working in the industry of global mobility for around 10 years. So I know many of you already. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Paradigm, and I'm the advocate for diversity in the community to try and get people from lots of different countries and industries and experience levels to hopefully join the community as we continue to evolve in the coming weeks and months. So nice to meet all of you and see some of you who I already know already. Thanks very much, Renee.
Great, thanks, Ben. And then over to some of our storytellers today, Ria Narula from India.
Hi everybody. I am Ria. I am from Formula Group in India. I'm a psychologist. After I did my master's in clinical psychology, I practiced at a hospital in India and shifted into the field of global mobility with Formula Group over a year ago. Very happy to be here and very excited to hear everybody talk today.
Great, thank you, Ria. Marie O'Neill, based in the UAE.
Hi, everybody. Firstly, delighted to be part of the Paradigm community. I'm based in Dubai in the UAE, originally from Ireland. Been living here 14 years and in the industry for the last 11 years, although traveled around the world and lived in Germany, South Korea, Australia, ended up in Dubai for the last 20 years. Yeah, delighted to be speaking today. And thanks to Renee, I was educated on the whole sustainability area. Didn't realize we were actually doing as much as we were doing until I had a conversation with her. So delighted to be part of this panel and to speak to you all.
Awesome, Marie. Thank you so much. Bram van Meulen from the Netherlands. Are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, I had some trouble unmuting. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Bram. Some of you might know me as well, and for others, I'm excited to be here. I work at Everhard Immigration Lawyers, a niche firm in Amsterdam, just solely based on immigration, mostly inbound. Been doing that for the last 10 years. And we've already had some pre-discussions for this panel, and I was pretty amazed on all the theoretical concepts that were behind this. But luckily, just as Marie also pointed out, I was happy to at least find out that we were doing some things already within our firm that may touch upon this issue as well. And yeah, hopefully in a bit we can provide some modest but practical sort of examples of what one can do with a firm on the practical level. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bram. And Philip Yip, who's actually not joining us in person because he's in Australia, and I'm not sure, but I think it's really wee hours of the morning. But we're going to have a recording that we'll share with you. So yeah, we're really excited with our panel and our storytellers today, which cover the globe just about. So yeah, we're really excited about that. Over to you, Audrey.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks so much, everyone. And yeah, I think we're doing decently well with our geographic diversity on this panel. Makes for a bit of a challenge with prep call timing and all of that. So I think we're going to start off at the high level with, as Bram was mentioning, like the theoretical. And for this, I'm going to turn to Ben to talk a little bit about the concept of Doughnut Economics, because I think when we talk about sustainability, I think a lot of people default to thinking about recycling or reducing emissions, direct environmental impacts. They feel like professional services companies or firms like ours can't really do anything to impact sustainability. But that's not really true, is it? Can you tell us a little bit about Doughnut Economics, what it is and what it has to say on this point, Ben?
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks. Before I do that, I want to break down the wall of formality and kind of just be more relaxed with you. And I'm going to tell you now, I've got a critique for you. But I'm going to start with a compliment. And as Renee said, I think I have to compliment you on the fact you've organised an event and a team, in fact, with people. I think today it's got speakers from 8 countries. Your team has I think 7 or 8 people in it from entirely different countries, but also covering the globe. And I think if we just pause for a second before we go into this, like 11 months ago, you were the person that wrote the mission for Paradigm, and look where we are now with so many people interested in that. So I do want to congratulate you on that and hosting this interesting topic. Before we go into it, so congratulations and well done. And now I can criticize some parts of
Go ahead. I'm used to the criticism, so you can proceed with that then without further delay.
So in terms of sustainability, I think the first question that we need to ask ourselves is what does that mean and how is it interpreted? This is a topic that we hear so often on LinkedIn, in businesses, in the news all the time at the moment. And there are various different buzzwords and interpretations. There's the circular economy, there's trying to achieve mission zero, there's stakeholder capitalism in terms of businesses perhaps having an interest in sustainability, but actually what is their intention? Is it actually just to do what they need to do to satisfy the client? Or is it really genuine? Is there a really serious intention to be sustainable? And what does that really mean? And over a year ago, I think some of us came across, or even beyond that, in fact, this quite radical idea that was invented, and I do consider her an inventor, by someone who's an economist, and her name is Kate Raworth. And Kate created this concept of Doughnut Economics, with the basic objective to end inequality. That's what she wanted to do, and she looked about what we can do and how we can think of ways to do that. And the reason I say I had a slight criticism, or critique, not criticism, is that one of the things that Kate says is that we are living in this world of obsession with growth. We're obsessed with the word grow. We want to grow our businesses. We want to grow our families. We want to grow in terms of our height. We want to grow in so many ways, and we see growth as a word for success. But the reality is that nothing really grows forever. In fact, someone could go to the doctor or something, and growth can be interpreted in an entirely different way. So we need to try and look at economics and success in a different way that isn't just a linear upwards line to keep growing and growing and growing, but actually what the focus should be on is an attempt to find balance, and not really grow, but actually thrive. And Kate's interpretation of what that would look like ended up looking like a donut. And I'm going to share my screen very briefly. Hopefully you can all see. 1 second. Can everyone see? Can you see that? Mm-hmm. The donut?
Yep.
So this is what the donut looks like. I'm going to hopefully just rattle through this because we've got so many great speakers. But on the outside, it was very much meeting the needs of the planet. But what we would like to focus on today is what we need to do to meet the needs of all people within the boundaries of the planet. And we focus a lot on the environment when we come to sustainability, but actually what we're really interested in terms of paradigm is what's on the inside of this donut. And this donut is actually a template. So for example, within the needs of what people need is things like health and food and water. But within a business context, I think we could really relate to some points in terms of gender equality and resilience and education and what we can do to thrive in that context of things. So I think this is a really important template, but it is a template. One of the beautiful things about what Kate says is this donut idea doesn't have to be taken word for word. It's 2 circles, but we can actually interpret it within whatever fits within our industry. So for example, on that inner side, yes, we can take certain parts like education or jobs and look to see where we can thrive, but we can also add things like language and culture, and really interpret the donut in a way that we want to help us really thrive in terms of whatever industry or whatever focus area it is, whether it's business or city life or planetary aspects of what we're interested in. So really sustainability can be interpreted in a way of thriving, but really it's what we want to see in terms of how we want that to develop and grow or thrive, I should say.
Thanks, Ben. So we need to rename my area then of paradigm that it's got to be thriving rather than growing. But then it doesn't go grow, gather, give. It doesn't match anymore.
It's
I don't
true.
know if we can do that.
True, you're right.
So, this is what got us started thinking about why we should do things differently, why we should think about things differently. But I guess, can you say a little bit more about how this relates to global mobility?
I can, and I'll swap your 3 Gs for 3 Is, and I'm going to give you inequality, ideas, and inventors. And I'll start with inequality. And I think one of the observations when we were all speaking about this idea, the 7 of us, but also taking feedback, was that we work in an industry that at least in my opinion, is going through a phase of inequality at the moment. There is imbalance. If you look at it in terms of the market, in terms of what, where people are actually going, a lot is actually focused on North America and Europe, in not just in terms of where clients are sending their people in terms of migration perspective, but also in terms of conferences, in terms of leading voices. We often hear about the people and the industries and the big clients. Actually, it's always about a specific type of company. It's always about a specific person that has a big name, and it's often about those main countries that have that voice. So there's a degree of inequality, I think, that needs to be addressed in global mobility. And we're not trying to conflict or start some sort of global mobility war. What we're trying to do is actually make the industry more interesting and have people who are leading voices from India, like Ria, or have people who are entirely unfamiliar, in fact, maybe with global mobility, like Adam, who's watching, and Niels, who is quite new to the industry. And that brings me on to the second point of ideas. And I want to thank everyone really who's joined the conversation today, because I think it's about time that we had new ideas in our industry and try and pull in thoughts and concepts from economics or philosophy or science or sports. And we're starting to do that. And the only way we can do that is if we try and push through the ceiling of our imagination and the boundaries that we have. Again, Ria has a degree in philosophy, and to take these ideas, just like Kate has taken ideas, from other concepts. She had this idea of Doughnut Economics in her drawer for 18 months, which she ignored, but to encourage new ideas. And we want to do that with the Paradigm community. And the third thing is, we're in a virtual room of 22 people at the moment. And I think there are 22 inventors in this room. I think there really are. Whether you set up your own business, whether you're young and have new ideas and want to cause a little bit of disruption to the status quo, that's exactly what they tried to do with Doughnut Economics. Kate describes herself as a renegade economist. And whilst we're not trying to change the world, I think we have these people in this room with these ideas and willingness to even join this conversation to talk about something that maybe is a little bit unusual. I think is a really fantastic thing. But just to end, because I know we need to move on, I think the real idea is to create a community that has long-term thinking in its framework and purpose at the very core of what we try to do, and that fits in very neatly with the Doughnut Economics concept. So really we want to do something that yes, it's fantastic in this first year or first few years, but really we hope to see people like Ria or Elsie 10 years from now taking the baton, and really people like Ashley and Carmela and more people that join us as well, connect with the more seasoned professionals in the community, but also develop these ideas and bring something new to the fold.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ben. Yes, we do need to move on because there's a lot of us to speak here, but that's a good, I think, high level view of the concepts we're dealing with here and why it might be good to think about doing things differently, to think about things as more circular and regenerative rather than linear, just grow. So I think we'll shift now to kind of more of the how, although it's still theoretical. There's still some really beautiful ideas, but looking at frameworks for, how can you implement these types of ideas in a business setting or in your day-to-day life to elevate human potential of those around you. So I think I'll shift over to Renee and Niels now.
Awesome, thank you. So at our practice session, we kind of discussed possibly dealing with some elephants in the room, which one was really around, if sustainability is a consideration, is global mobility a consideration, considering it impacts CO2 emissions, et cetera, and not particularly addressing, let's say, local jobs, et cetera. But what I wanted to say is I basically studied sustainability in a post-capital world, and what it was and I studied it because I thought, I don't think global mobility is anything in my future. I'm going to have to look at a new career and let me go and study something that might be relevant into the future. But in studying sustainable development, it talks a lot about the fact that, for example, in undeveloped or developing locations like Africa, foreign direct investment is very much part of the future. And so I guess it was something that I've heard a couple of people sort of having a conversation about. It's like, is this really relevant into the future? So yes, it is. And I think it's a matter of how we address it and how we manage it going forward. And, you know, part of being strategic in terms of our thought process on how we do it. There was another one, it was around the cost. You know, sustainable development is going to cost so much money. I'm a small business sitting, you know, somewhere. And I think the reality around that, and hopefully we'll go into a bit more detail, but is if you don't consider this as something you need to invest in, think about maybe a corporate client choosing a supplier. They may not choose you, one, and two, the youth of today, tomorrow, are going to want to work with companies who are sustainably minded. So I think just from it's going to cost me money, is it worth investing in? Yes, it is. I think because of the way people are going to procure services and those who want to enter the job market, who they're going to look to be employed by. So those were two little elephants that I thought I'd mention. But without further ado, I want to get on to Niels and a lot of his conversation and the handbook that I was recently exposed to, of which there are, I think, 9 chapters. But we are actually only dealing with one of the chapters, really, which is around elevating human potential. But maybe, Niels, just to give a broad stroke for the audience about Positive, just so they've got a bigger sort of picture before we dive in deeper.
Yeah, wonderful, Renee. I will try to be short. So basically, I will create a bridge in between, you know, what Ben has shared and what we're doing, because it's extremely interconnected. We live on a planet that has limited resources. We are extracting these resources, thinking that, you know, growth is eternal and we have infinite resources and there is no limitation. And we're exploiting people with cheap labor workforce and all the rest of it. So how do we shift from this extractive and exploitative mindset to something that allow our humanity to thrive and our ecosystems to survive, basically? And the real question today is not whether our planet is going to thrive or not in the future, is whether or not our species will still be on Earth in 100 or 200 years. And I think that's really important to recenter that. Is we're not trying to solve, you know, nature. We are trying to solve ourselves that have been, you know, inspired and ingrained with a narrative of this extractive system. So what we do at Positive is basically hosting an ecosystem of purpose-led companies. We focus on small and medium enterprises in general from around the world, and we provide them with events, community, resources, you know, resources including the handbook that Renee mentioned, but also a couple of toolkits from, you know, going net zero and beyond as a business, going beyond zero waste, having circular models, looking at diversity, looking at supply chains, looking at marketplace ethics and all the rest of it. And we've built our own methodology that basically onboards the donut of Kate Reworth and can help any professional going beyond sustainability. So that's what we do. And my firm belief, because I really believe this is not about what we do in life, it's more about what we believe in. And what I believe is that a better world is at reach. And actually, you know, all of us in this school and all our networks and people around have power into their hands. The question is, do we have the courage to transform, you know, what we've been used to do? And what kind of questions, what kind of critical thinking do we get to make sure that actually the status quo that we're part of is actually shifting towards something that is new, reinventing, rethinking the way we proceed and the way we act as professionals, as citizens of the world, and as custodians of the earth.
Great, I love that. So Niels, actually, one of the words Audrey mentioned earlier was regenerative, and you've just used it again. And I think what I wanted to sort of get you to dive into is a little bit about sort of the difference between sustainable, I suppose, and regenerative. And one of the quotes in your handbook, which I really love, and it is, you have to listen to it very carefully because it's complex, but it says, you can't change anyone else, but people do change in relationship to your change. All relationships are a system. And when any one part of a system changes, it affects the other part. And I just love that from, you know, how interconnected we are as well. But in terms of the regenerative, I'd love to hear more about the difference between the sustainable and regenerative approach.
Yeah, so very simply, and that could be understood by a child, and that's the approach we have to be as inclusive as possible and to bring as many people as we can in the change. Sustainability is about doing less harm. So it's not necessarily about doing no harm, it's just reducing the harm you do. Regenerative is about doing more good. So it's not a question of whether you should harm people and the planet. When you're regenerative, you basically put back more than you take, put back more into nature, put back more into society, put back more into individuals. And you know, in relation to the quote you've shared, René, there is this story of disconnection that has appeared, you know, in the past century and even more, is, you know, all as individual, we disconnected, you know, with the mind, with the body, and with nature. And the real shift that we need to see today, and the real work that we need to do, you know, is to reconnect to ourselves, understanding who we are as individuals, what role do we want to play, what impact we can make. And in that sense, you know, sourcing the change from within and understanding where our work is coming from, who are we, you know, how do we show up? And it's about us, you know, potentially as founders, leaders, professionals, but it's also about the people around us, our teams, the people we collaborate with, our partners, making sure that everyone can actually have a safe and open space to thrive, to be themselves, and to bring their unique value. Once again, you know, let's take the simple example. If I was alone in this room and thinking about the concept, we wouldn't go as far as we will today by just being together and co-creating an answer to something that we might not, you know, fully master. So that's really about how do you bring people together? How do you co-create? How do you collaborate? And basically do not look at this top-down perspective of, you know, you leading a team or a group of people, but actually, you know, co-leading, co-creating, and helping each other to be part of the solution and have something that is consistent, interconnected, and creating a wall of solution.
Great. So you bring so many important points there. Kind of my mind's everywhere, but I guess, you know, myself and probably most of the others on the call, you know, as business leaders, you know, we're obliged to cope with so many sort of challenges, you know, the level of stress in the workplace, inefficient resources, profound inequalities, high competition, social tensions, quick digitization, weak supply chains, so much more. You know, and at the same time, we're expected to have this air of positivity with our teams and everything's going to be okay. And you know, do you have like any sort of frameworks or something for us to lean on in terms of how we cope, or what could guide us with some of these areas?
Yeah, so definitely the first point that is, I think, important that we often forget is that you know, being a sustainable or regenerative business is actually not a question of the way you show up, is actually a question of whether your business is going to thrive and survive in a couple of years' time. And when I say survive, you know, it might sound quite intense, but I think that's the reality we live in. Considering the global challenges we face, a business that will exist tomorrow is not a business that has, you know, kind of a formal and regular structure as we see it today. So that's, for me, that's a no-brainer. It's something we need to do. It's a transition that we need to do as soon as possible, not as fast as possible because it takes time, but as soon as possible, and just starting the journey. When it comes to practical insights, something that is really important, and I'm guessing most of you are leaders and leading your teams, and in that sense, it's bringing a whole, you know, paradigm of compassion of vulnerability. It's not necessarily having all the answers. It's not necessarily, you know, saying we're going to go that direction because I have the answer. is accepting the unknown. And in that sense is bringing teams together and partners and asking the questions that might be, a bit painful, in the sense that it might question the existence of your business, or it might question the reason why you're doing the work you do, but it's going to help you transform and deep dive. We work, for instance, at Positive with companies that exist for the only reason of solving a social and environmental problem. And in that sense, this evolves. So one day this problem might be solved, which is a great thing. And then their purpose will be transformational and will evolve at the time they solve it. But the key question is like, what kind of problem do you answer? What do you match with? And in that sense, your teams, your partners, your beneficiaries, your clients can actually be part of this answer. And more involved they will be, better it is. So it's really about shifting from this top-down to bottom-up perspectives, empowering the many and making sure that we kind of shift the way we approach things. And it can involve a lot of things. So if you shift towards sustainability, regenerative kind of approaches, it's also about retaining talents. As Renee shared, the workforce is actually looking for more purpose. We've seen it with COVID. The most lucky ones have been able to change jobs, to resign, and to apply to purpose-led companies. The younger generation is just craving for purpose-led jobs. Clients are also more and more demanding, more and more educated about this. So they're questioning businesses. And in that sense, it's kind of starting to be a bottleneck for businesses that actually are stuck into the old paradigm. And in that sense, it's a fantastic opportunity to open a new chapter. It doesn't mean that you need to erase what you've done, but it's basically learning about what happened and building the new, rethinking and reapproaching the work you do. And in that sense, it can bring so much to you, to your audiences, and to people that surround your business and are interested by what you do.
Brilliant. Yes. I've got one more quick. You referred to two things I'd love to discuss, but I know we're probably going to run out of time. But one thing I'd really like to just quickly bring in before we go to our stories is you referred to the sort of team and motivating teams. How do we kind of make sure, or do you have some hints for us in terms of bringing our team's whole self to work? So, I'm sure there's some strategies which you could help us in terms of making sure that they arrive being the most productive people they can be for the business. Do you have any help there?
Yeah, so it's basically shifting from the mindset that an employee or a partner is a resource, but actually, potential. And empowering this potential goes through actually giving space to this person to be themselves. There is the concept of intersectionality, you might have heard of it, is that basically all of us on this call don't only have an identity. I'm not only a Western European male. I'm also someone who's passionate about sustainability, who's passionate about sport, who's passionate about things. And then, across these different channels comes my personality and who I am. And in that sense, honoring the different personalities and identities that we all have is extremely important, because then you don't have this relationship of, being a leader and having an employee or a partner, but it's actually crossing paths in so many different levels. So it's accepting people the way they are, not necessarily creating a box where they need to fit. So it's not a job position where they apply and you tell them, you're going to stay there and I don't allow you to move beyond these boundaries. It's actually opening up more and more space, making sure that there are rules, that there are boundaries, that's part of the system, but creating these rules with colleagues and with everyone around you, and then looking at, what is kind of the opportunity that you give to them to be intrapreneurs. So what I call intrapreneur is basically being an entrepreneur as an employee or being part of a system. Being an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur can be, being part of a team and just creating or proposing a new idea and working on it. So how do you give space to these people to be themselves, to elaborate, to iterate, to create, and in that sense, allowing this cognitive diversity to happen for people to bring different ideas, different visions, different experiences into the table and saying, okay, what do we do with that? How do we evolve as a company, as a living system, rather than being a static entity that stays on very clear standards that do not evolve within time and with the reality that we face?
Amazing, great, wow. I feel like we can carry on forever on this one, but we won't, because I know we've got stories to tell. So I'm going to cross over to Audrey to share some stories with the panel.
Absolutely. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Niels. That's great. I love that idea of entrepreneurship and how you talk about, empowering people to be full participants in the business and, the benefits that can bring for their well-being and for the business as a whole. That's really inspiring. So thank you for that. I agree. We could talk about just that section for hours possibly, but definitely also want to hear from people who have already put this into practice, because I know sometimes in my business I look at all of these amazing concepts that are out there and I'm kind of overwhelmed and like, what can I actually do? So I think it's really helpful to hear concrete examples of things people have already done, where you can start with this. So to kick us off, Marie, could you tell us a little bit about the exciting things that you're doing in your work?
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. And just really interesting listening to Niels. And, since I was involved in this panel, our practice calls and everything, I've learned so much, and I suppose, opened my eyes to what we're actually doing. And I suppose just to kind of set the scene, I didn't explain when I introduced myself. So I'm the managing director of a destination service provider company based in the UAE. We offer services across the Middle East. We've 26 full-time staff and 20 consultants across the Middle East. So basically at the end of last year, when the board and management team sat to look at what our strategy would be for 2021, our key thing, we realized that, 2020 with COVID was a very difficult year for our staff. And we noticed that it had taken a toll on our staff. All our staff are expats. They're living away from family, the majority of them. They weren't able to get home to family. There was lockdown, lots of stresses and tolls on our staff. So we really said, we need to make 21 the year of our staff, their wellness and their well-being. And as well, we noticed that, in 2020, we lost a few staff members. And staff members left for various reasons, some of them COVID related. They didn't go to other jobs. They just wanted a break. It was too much for them. They, I suppose, started to think a lot about things. So, that made us think as well, we really need to look after our staff and start looking at ways and what we can do for them. So management didn't come up with all these ideas. We basically sat with our leaders within the business and asked everybody for ideas, and down to, every single member of the company contributed to the ideas of what we could do for the staff in 2021. So we came up with various ideas. We started implementing a rockstar gathering once a month. So basically we got a little Elvis 1-foot statue, and that was basically given to one staff member every month. So it's a very informal gathering. We sat around in desks, talked about various things that happened in the previous month, what was happening the future month. A very big part of it was giving feedback, client feedback, and recognizing our staff. And basically the rockstar was given to a staff member that got very good feedback from a client. We also implemented a secret night out initiative. So again, one staff member was given secretly a voucher from the company to go have dinner with friends or family, and then report back in the Rockstar gathering, have pictures of their night out or what event they went to. And then we had a quiz. We have a quiz as well in our Rockstar gathering, and we give a prize for that. So we're constantly kind of giving out vouchers, prizes, thanking our staff when they get good feedback. We have a bell in the office. We ring that when there's anything positive. So it's just trying to bring that, happy environment within the office. And, we're an SME, we're a small company. We can't compete with the Fortune 500 companies for salary. So we want to make a difference in how we treat our staff. And, they're not just a number here. It's a family, a warm environment. We have different things going on every month. Like we have challenges every second month. We had a sleep challenge. And we have that as an individual challenge and also as a team challenge. So it's good for teamwork and getting people to work together. And the month we had the sleep challenge, we noticed a huge improvement on people's morale, the way they handle stress, because everyone was focusing, of course, on sleeping more, and their Fitbits told how much they did actually sleep. And it was a wake-up call for a lot of us, especially when you've at the time I had a 5-month-old baby. So I think I was kind of last on the list for that challenge for winning it. But it was really interesting to see, and everyone was really motivated. We also did a Fitbit walk steps challenge, again, individual and teams. And then we had prizes at the end of each of these challenges. We've done a weight loss challenge, which was optional. and there was no pressure on anyone. It was all anonymous, the figures. We had every Sunday morning a weigh-in, which actually was really fun. And then we had prizes at the end of it. So again, that helped. And we focused on it was people's well-being, eating healthier, not so much the numbers of losing weight. And again, the atmosphere in the office, people's, you know, motivation and happiness levels raised. So there are just some ideas. We've done so many things over the year, and I don't want to keep going on and on. We had an annual seminar, which usually we had in a conference room in a hotel. We shifted that outside. We had it in a nice park area, birds singing. We had a yoga instructor give us a yoga session. We had a wellness coach, and then we followed up by giving everyone a coaching session individually after that. We had a personal stylist come and advise people on how they dress, how they can match clothes, colors, etc. So we wanted to think outside the box and do things differently and just help people feel better. I do every second Thursday, I take one staff member for lunch, and it's just talking about them, their families, how are their families, you know, if they have any problems. Our operations director does a walk and talk series. So she takes a staff member out at lunchtime for a walk and just chats to them. So it's just, you know, we're trying to do things differently. And I suppose I didn't realize what we were doing was actually, you know, on the whole sustainability area at all until I had a conversation with Renee and, you know, discuss what we were doing. And she said, you know, this actually, you were doing a lot. Like I thought that being a sustainable company was planting trees, which living in a desert is quite difficult to do, or electric cars. So it was an eye-opener. And I suppose realizing what we're doing now has really motivated us to look at what we can do next year. And we have this year, as well as part of our new initiatives, we hired 2 interns, and we now have one of our interns working on this project on what we can do next year. And I suppose if you look at the challenges or of all of this, there hasn't really been any challenges. It's been fun. The biggest challenge, I suppose, is coming up with ideas and, you know, looking at next year, God, what will we do to bring in fresh ideas and to keep people motivated? But yeah, and you know, the positives from it all, we've a much more motivated team. You know, staff, you know, nutrition is a lot less than what it was. We're getting better client feedback because our staff are happier. The overall being a team player, you know, it's much better in the office. Happiness, motivation, it's endless, the positive things that have come out of this. And I suppose as well, you know, they're very small things. Yes, we give vouchers and bring people out for dinner and lunches and stuff, but the cost of it is actually quite minimal. And the return from it and the happiness of our staff is huge. So I suppose I'm conscious of time. I'm not going to keep talking and talking, but, you know, I would just, I suppose my words would be, you know, just kind of look at what you're doing. You're probably doing a lot already, and you can do a lot, which doesn't cost a lot, you know, very small things. And as well, get your staff engaged, ask them for ideas, you know, and then you really get the buy-in of everyone. And, you know, it just creates a much nicer work environment for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the sleep competition might be my favorite thing ever, Marie. That's fantastic. But I love the tips of getting your staff involved and having the intern do it, because that's, as a business owner, sometimes I'm like, there aren't any more hours in the day to come up with ideas, even though I'm very committed to the concept of elevating human potential. So those are really fantastic tips. Thank you. And Niels had a comment, you know, I believe we will come to a point where people are not seeking anymore the highest salary, but the best conditions to be supported spending quality time. And I think that's so true, especially post-pandemic. It's what people are looking for. So Renee, back to you.
Yeah, and I think just one of the things Marie mentioned was, you know, kind of like, you know, the feedback she got in terms of the staff, you know, their happiness going up. Now, actually, one of the big things that I'm hearing all the time is like, how do we measure sustainability? How do we report on it? There's a report. My staff went from frustrated, stressed, not sleeping to happy, you know, productive. You know, so just to give people an idea, when you hear people saying, well, can you report on that? Or, you know, what are the metrics around it? Bear in mind, the minute you start doing it, you'll be able to measure it. So don't worry about the measuring first, worry about the doing first. Anyway, so let's hear another story from Bram. Would love to hear all of your things you've done in your business.
Thank you very much. And I have to concur with the other ones. I really loved Marie's examples. That was, I picked up a few, and I think there's a lot we can do within our firm as well. Within our firm, it's usually, I mean, we party way too much when we have the chance, and we have, even if our firm has their own band, whenever we have a retreat or something, we have our band playing, and when someone leaves, we make our own songs to give them a proper goodbye. But a lot of new ideas here. But I will then focus a little bit differently on more within our firm. Just to put it in perspective, we have on average 35 people of staff. That's the lawyers, paralegals, and the secretaries. So just to give an idea, it's not a huge firm, but these are our numbers. And when I think about sustainability of the organization, or like our people, it's all about like investing in the people and providing a perspective of growth. Like, can someone grow within the company? And so I try to maybe distinguish three separate parts in which we do a certain amount of things. One would be, I would say, start of the career, one would be during, and one would be maybe after the career. And with the start of the career, I would say that we do a lot to invest in new talent. We have an intern system where we always have a rotation of students interning in our firm. And what I love to see is that a lot of them afterwards, either when they first go to work in the court or at a competitor, they maybe come back at some point. Also, a lot of them are working for us now, or they work for our competitors. And I think that's maybe less good for us, but very good for the profession at large, I would say. We are now talking about a more structural scholarship. There's an international moot court competition specific for immigration between universities. And we want to give a sort of grant to one of the Dutch universities to always help the team, because they need to go international to compete with that moot court, and I always need funding with that. And with universities, that's always a bit difficult. So that's one of the ways to get yourself already seen by the students when they're still studying, and get them enthusiastic about your company. Then maybe during the career, so when you have the talent on board, I think mentorship is very important. It's also a little bit ingrained in our system of educating lawyers, because you have a sort of tutor system for 3 years. And then even afterwards, I would say that usually that lawyer who's guiding you through that process usually stays on as your mentor in a sort of more informal capacity. And that works really well. And I think in educating new lawyers, and also it's permanent, I would say, it's not just in the beginning. Niels already mentioned the idea of entrepreneurs. And I think that's something that we really try to instill with people within the firm, like, be your own entrepreneur. I mean, of course, there are certain boundaries and there are certain things that management has something to say about, but within those boundaries, you're really free to have all kinds of opinions, to really act as your own boss, I would say, because that works the best, and the people thrive the best. And as long as you can make those boundaries at least feel not too restrictive, I would say that really works. Participation. We try to be a pretty flat organization. I mean, obviously you have a partnership and big choices are made by the partnership, but we always encourage people to give their opinions, and they do on everything. But we also have like corporate retreats every now and then, where we really challenge people, and it's also the paralegals that go with the retreats and the junior lawyers. So everyone comes, and then they come up with a lot of great ideas, and then it's up to us to not just immediately see the difficult parts about what they come up with, but just sort of try to listen and see what we can use in practice and maybe roll out within the company. So, for example, we now have only vegetarian lunches. We would always have a lot of ham and meat on the table, and we always have lunch together. And someone just said, like, well, I'm vegetarian, but if we want to be a bit more sustainable, why don't we have vegetarian lunch? And at first I was like, I like ham, but then I was like, all right, that's actually a really good idea. So now we it's a small thing, but it's those are things that work. And I think also on in terms of like how to deal with your employees, and I think that really works to every now and then challenge them to come up with things, because that also challenges them to be entrepreneurs or to be their own boss within the company within certain limits. And we have bi-monthly meetings with all the lawyers and again paralegals to talk about issues that we find important and dilemmas that they face in practice. And there are often ethical dilemmas, how to deal with clients, and so it's very important to it's a very good means to keep each other sharp. And I think I think it's really important for everyone, and not just like, it's not the older lawyers explaining it to the young ones. It's just like everyone's like, oh yeah. And maybe also often just to see that everyone faces the same difficulties or challenges every now and then. That's helpful from a sanity perspective. And every now and then, but that's just if someone needs it or asks for it, we provide a coach externally to individual employees when it's like really maintaining your sort of sanity, and also stress management, because it is a stressful job ultimately. And that's not implemented yet, but that's something we talk about now, and I think I can put it on the table here because I think it's an interesting idea. Sustainability is also a thing. Like, when are you stepping out? I mean, I'm not pensioned yet, but our partnership model, we now have a lot of people that are in their 50s, and you want to offer a viable option for new associates to ultimately grow within the firm and become part of the partnership. So we're now talking about, like, should we as partners sort of have a mandatory system that we step out at 60, maybe stay on as of counsel. I mean, we don't necessarily have to be kicked out of the firm entirely, but to allow room for the partnership to sort of refresh itself. And we are now almost in existence for 40 years. And I am, if I look at the pictures as well, and if I hear the stories from the beginning years, we're a very different firm now than we were back then. But I think that's sort of like keeping the ideas fresh is probably also good. That I shouldn't stay there until I'm really old, I would say. So should allow other people to implement new and fresh ideas.
Great.
I think the time is, we're running low on
We're
time, right?
going to run right over. We might have to save that for the chat afterwards. But I know, I mean, as I said earlier, is that you literally have so much to contribute, and we really appreciate, some of your sharing now. So hopefully it's given people some more ideas. And Ben mentioned in the comments something about the connection to the educational institutes, which is just, something to think about for businesses. And just a little point I wanted to add is, by having an intern, for example, you're actually dealing with the Sustainable Development Goals 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, and 10, and 17. So it's actually, exactly. There's something to be very, very proud of. So I know, excellent, well done. Ria, I know you've got a story for us as well. How's our time, Audrey? Like, what sort of time?
We're like 10 minutes over time already.
Okay.
But we still definitely want to hear the story. So I think, Ria, go ahead and share your story, and then I'll quickly play Philip Yip, who's recorded a story from Australia for us. And then I know we promised to leave time for chat at the end. We can definitely stay on a few extra minutes if people in the audience want to chat, have questions for us. We don't want to deny you that opportunity. But I think, Ria, go ahead and tell your story.
Okay, so I can try and be as quick as I can. So a part of my role at Formula is in people development. So we have a team called the People Development Team that focuses on building programs for our employees' well-being, as well as helping them achieve their full potential. The story that I'm sharing today is of a recent, very unique program that we started at Formula. It's called Formula's Pit Stop, which is basically a support group that we run for all of our employees across India. So we are in 8 locations across India, and we have like over 200 people. So support group that runs for all the employees. We're divided into groups of 6 that meet every quarter actually. And we talk about everything under the sun other than work. So it's, as the name suggests, it's basically a pit stop for, our employees to connect with one another, share different aspects of who they are other than their work selves. In fact, the sessions that we had like all of last month were some of the most amazing sessions that I attended. People shared stories of loss that they experienced during COVID in India, their learnings from working from home, the struggles that they went through. We played a bunch of improv games, and you learn so much about who they are other than, Ria from the psychology department at Formula Group. The reason we decided to go ahead with something like this is because we wanted to, it's actually very similar to what Niels was talking about. We wanted to create a safe space for our employees to show up as their whole selves, right? A space where they can be more than what we see at work. So I'm not just Ria from this department at Formula, I'm also Ria whose sister works in wildlife, or also Ria who is quite funny and makes a lot of puns and connect with people on that level. Ben laughed on that because I think he recently saw my pun about donuts. Yeah. So in this space, we want people to share those parts of who they are. In doing so, I believe it's like a donut effect. When people feel safe to be their whole selves in one part of work, that translates into everyday life at work, which obviously leads to certain advantages like, feeling more connected to the organization, a greater level of belonging, but also psychologically, I believe it helps people expand their minds. They also begin to approach work as a whole, which means they learn to make neural connections from different parts of their life into solving work problems. And in doing so, we increase resilience, increase creativity, approaching problems at work from different learnings and different parts of life. We also create a space where people can share these new ideas that they come up with at work. So it's a very holistic program, and it has been very beneficial until now. We've had people really like bond with each other on some of the most amazing, interesting things. We've had groups where they find out that they were from the same hometown, and now they hang out and have drinks together. So it's a very it's a really great program. How we went about it is quite straightforward. In the people development team, every time we have any program, the first thing that we do is we sit and we ask the question, what is our purpose for this program? And a very specific question that we ask is, how can we best serve who these programs are being built for? Once we have a good answer for that, we went on to dividing groups. We actually spent a great amount of time dividing our groups, making sure that we had only 6 people in a group, and every time everybody joined in, they had felt safe enough to actually felt like they could be heard. We didn't have to cut anybody short. Each of these programs is quite structured and is facilitated by me or people in my team. So it's a very structured program. We have an icebreaker, we have questions, we have improv games. At the end of each session, we have feedback forms that everybody fills anonymously. We also asked each group to decide how often they want to meet. And I think because we're short on time, I'm just going to quickly tell you the biggest lesson I learned from this is that group dynamics are very important. So if you do think of creating a support group in your work, be very conscious of the size of the group. And that's about it. Yeah, I feel like I'm a little rushed, but yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Ria. No, I think that's fantastic. And I love, how your psychology background is infused into all of that and the structure of it. And I feel like, we said we wanted this to be the beginning of a conversation. Maybe we can have a place for you to share some of those tips on the structure, and for each of you who's spoken with the story to maybe share tips, and we can do that in social media posts or share with our members. I am, because Philip went to the trouble of recording it, I do want to play his clip with his story from Australia. Totally understand if people have conflicts and need to drop, but I want this to be at least in the recording. As I mentioned a moment ago, we're happy to stay on a few extra minutes to entertain questions and just have a chat. So feel free to drop or to stay with us here. I'm going to share my screen with Philip's story now.
Hello, everybody, and greetings from Sydney. My name is Philip Yip, and for those of you who don't know me, I lead a small immigration law practice based in Sydney, Australia, with 3 other lawyers. On a personal level, I'm a dad with kids, and I'm into, when I have time, tennis, bike riding, and music. How did I start on this journey to grow a sustainable practice? Well, in March of 2020, I was invited to present on a panel presentation titled Beyond Pro Bono at an immigration law conference held in Prague. This panel was to be led by our dear friend Marco Maseski, and I'm truly grateful to Marco and of course Audrey for giving me the opportunity to immerse myself in a topic about which I had absolutely no prior knowledge. The challenge, you see, was to examine my practice and the scope of my engagement over and above pro bono services that most lawyers tend to provide in Australia anyway. So my first action was to ask myself, well, who is my core audience? And the answer was our clients and, of course, my staff members. By extension, then our business partners and the global mobility community at large would be a core audience as well. Action number 2 was to define the level of our commitment to sustainability in a way that resonated with our clients and my staff, as well as truthfully reflecting the DNA of our brand. The third action was to detox our practice, to remove barriers to our quality of life, our value proposition, our environmental responsibilities, to begin to craft what could be called our legacy. So what have we been doing for sustainability? We joined a global tree replanting initiative called Print Relief, which is a global certification system and software platform for automated global reforestation. The more we print or scan, the more trees are planted. Secondly, we chose 2 important clients and we offered them free advisory services as well as substantially reduced pricing on visa and migration services. Now, those recipients I'm authorised to name. They are Médecins Sans Frontières in Australia and the Garvan Institute of Medical Research. And we're very, very happy to partner with them and have their endorsement on our website as well. But there are other initiatives that we need to consider. For example, what if for every client referral you were to receive, you would give a number of days of school fees for disadvantaged children in Thailand? Or for what if every email that you sent, you provided a day's worth of grain seed to nourish kids and families in Malawi? Or you contribute to water purification or well building initiatives to support subsistence farming in Cambodia or Ethiopia? Or how about contributing to access for income generating tools like microloans for women in Bangladesh? Look, there are a lot of initiatives that you can think about and create. The main difference is that these initiatives are all connected to stages of our business journey with our clients and our partners. That's the big difference. So I wish you all well, and hopefully we'll get to see each other face to face soon. All the very best, and bye for now.
All right. Well, some more great inspirational ideas from Philip. He was sad that he could not be with us. When he was having tech difficulty for a moment, he volunteered to stay up all night to be with us, but we figured out the tech and told him that wouldn't be necessary. But he's definitely very dedicated to this idea of business sustainability. So thank you all so much for being here. I will pause for just a minute. If anyone, I know we're over time, but if anyone has questions, wants to make comments, you all do have the power to unmute yourself. Just had everyone muted for background noise, but feel free to do so if you like. Otherwise, we really appreciate people being here today. Like I said at the beginning, we hope that this will be a start of a conversation. We want to share more stories to inspire more people. So if you are doing things, if you've now realized, like Brahm and like Marie did, that, oh, wow, we are doing sustainable things already, and you'd like to have your story featured, we're going to record little clips. Or if you have someone else that you know of that's doing great things and you think they'd be a good candidate to share their story, please don't hesitate to reach out. Contact details are on our website, or if you've got my direct email, you can always email me direct as well. We really welcome feedback, thoughts, input at any time. So thank you all again, and thank you to our speakers. You were all really fantastic. All right.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your day. Bye.
Ciao,
Thanks,
Michael.
everyone. Bye.
Everyone's staying on.
Bye.